Now, for more on this, we're being joined by Mr. Alon Burstein, Visiting Assistant Professor, Israel Institute, Fellow Department of Political Science, University of California, Irvine. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA, sir. Always a pleasure to have you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Now, sir, Hamas has hinted at rejecting the extraordinarily generous hostage deal, as Blinken called it. Now, do you feel Israel needs to drop its plans for Rafa, because that is the bone of contention at the moment, to get Hamas to agree? Is that the only way for a truce to happen?
So Hamas is indicating that it is going to reject the deal, but it is not actually rejecting it. What Hamas has an interest in doing right now is prolonging negotiations. Israel and the IDF right now are stuck. The IDF has pulled most of its forces out of Han Yunis. The IDF is not actually carrying out any operations in the Gaza Strip and is waiting for the Rafah invasion, but Israel is being held back by the United States and by the potential for a deal. So Hamas really has an interest in constantly saying maybe yes, maybe no. Israel is a little bit stuck. If it were to do what you suggested and cancel the Rafah plans, then Hamas could say, okay, now we'll negotiate in 2 months. Now there's no pressure. In turn, if Israel were to go ahead with the Rafah plans, then it would be going against what the United States says and would possibly be torpedoing the deal. So Israel is stuck, and Hamas is taking advantage of that tactically during the negotiations.
Alon, how important is it for the US to secure this truce deal between Israel and Hamas, given the kind of pressure that's mounting within the US with the university protests gripping the country? It is an election year, after all, in the US as well.
Absolutely, and those two factors are really the two most important ones, in addition to the Saudi deal. Given that it is an election year, President Biden needs to show something that is happening positively in the Middle East. His foreign policy is heavily criticized in a lot of ways, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in relation to the Middle East, and this has nothing to do with the fact that he has been overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. Nonetheless, the war seems stuck, and he's being very criticized, and this rising protests that are happening in universities are also adding pressure. President Biden and the Biden administration really want a Saudi deal. They want Saudi Arabia to have normalization with Israel, and they want this to create an alliance against Iran. For that, they need this deal. They need Israel to agree to a ceasefire. And that is the reason that they are so pressuring Israel not to go into Rafah, because there is no way that that takes any less than at least 6 weeks or 8 weeks. That's too long in an election year. We're already in May for the Biden administration.
Just on that note, Antony Blinken has also mentioned that Washington cannot possibly support a Rafah assault. And Israel, of course, is adamant on carrying out the offensive. It has plans that it has set for that as well. But there is no action plan showing which ensures civilian security as well. So do you think, given the situation right now, the United States, which happens to be a staunch supporter of Israel, will pull the plug?
So the United States is making very clear that it does not endorse a Rafah invasion. That said, Israel is constantly saying it is going to do a Rafah invasion. It is very unlikely that Israel will do something that the United States unequivocally tells it not to do. A lot of the rhetoric in Israel's government that Netanyahu is constantly saying a Rafah invasion is coming. There is a date set. It's about to happen. It's about to happen. He's been saying this for over 2 months. That is more meant for internal politics. It's meant to satisfy his very right-wing government that we've spoken about many times over the last year and a half. He needs to satisfy them by constantly saying that there's going to be a Rafah invasion. It is very unlikely that if the United States tells him absolutely not, that he will in fact go forth. Now, it is possible that the United States will say don't do a full invasion, but Israel will carry out a smaller invasion, will carry out small-scale invasions and try to make good on saying we are invading Rafah, but not going against the U.S. But it is very unlikely. Israel cannot afford to completely alienate the United States. It is relying on the United States for diplomatic security, for rearmament, for military aid. Israel will very unlikely slap the U.S. in the face like that, in my opinion.
Israel is definitely dependent on the US for the arms that it needs to continue its war effort, and hopefully in times to come we'll see Israel adapting to what the US wants it to do at the moment. Thank you for joining in. That was Alon Burstein joining us from California. Always a pleasure having you here, Alon.
Thank you for seeing you. Have a good day.